Gilgamesh, subtitled Recovering the Masterpiece of Babylonian Literature, because that's what it is. But first of all, we do have to ask ourselves the question, what is Gilgamesh?
The Epic of Gilgamesh stands as humanity's oldest known epic poem, telling the fascinating story of King Gilgamesh's quest for immortality. Originally composed in ancient Mesopotamia around 2600 BCE, this remarkable literary work has been translated into 24 languages and continues to captivate readers with its relatability. It's basically humanity's first ever blockbuster, packed with friendship, grief, adventure, and a wild chase for immortality. And in 2022, it hit 150 years since it was rediscovered by a guy named George Smith, who literally cried after translating it. Stick around, because this story connects ancient kings to you right now. The rediscovery of Gilgamesh and Andrew George's role. The clay tablets containing the Epic of Gilgamesh lay buried beneath desert sands for millennia before their remarkable rediscovery. A story that unfolds like a detective novel spanning centuries and continents. This ancient masterpiece, once lost to time, now speaks to modern readers largely through the dedicated work of scholars like Andrew George. In the mid-19th century, the ancient Assyrian city of Nineveh, near modern-day Mosul, Iraq, became the focus of intense archaeological interest. British diplomat and amateur archaeologist Austin Henry Layard began excavations there in 1849, unearthing the ruins of magnificent palaces. His assistant, Hormuzd Rassam, later discovered the legendary library of King Ashurbanipal, the last great ruler of the Assyrian Empire who reigned from 668 to 627 BCE. This royal library contained thousands of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing system of ancient Mesopotamia. Among these tablets were fragments of what would eventually be recognized as the Epic of Gilgamesh. The tablets had been carefully collected and preserved by King Ashurbanipal, an educated ruler who appreciated literature and commissioned scribes to gather texts from throughout his empire. The clay fragments, though broken and incomplete, had survived remarkably well, protected by the collapsed buildings that had once housed them. After excavation, these priceless artifacts were shipped to the British Museum in London, where they remained largely unstudied for years, waiting for someone who could unlock their secrets. In 1872, a self-taught Assyriologist named George Smith made a breakthrough that would forever change our understanding of ancient literature. While examining the cuneiform tablets in the British Museum's collection, Smith discovered what appeared to be an account of a great flood, remarkably similar to the biblical story of Noah. On December 3, 1872, Smith presented his findings to the Society of Biblical Archaeology in London, creating an immediate sensation. The Daily Telegraph newspaper subsequently sponsored Smith's return to Nineveh to search for missing fragments of the story. Remarkably, during this expedition, Smith discovered a crucial missing piece that completed the flood narrative. An almost miraculous find, considering the thousands of fragments scattered throughout the site. Smith's translation revealed that the Babylonian flood story predated the biblical account by centuries, challenging Victorian religious assumptions. His work on the Chaldean account of Genesis, published in 1876, brought the epic to public attention for the first time in thousands of years. Unfortunately, Smith died of dysentery during his third expedition to Mesopotamia in 1876, at the age of just 36. Fast forward to modern times, Assyriologist Andrew George has emerged as the foremost authority on the Epic of Gilgamesh. Through painstaking scholarship spanning decades, George has reconstructed the most complete and accurate version of the epic available today. His landmark 2003 translation for Penguin Classics stands as the definitive English edition, incorporating all known fragments and providing extensive commentary. George's work is distinguished by both its scholarly rigor and its accessibility to general readers. Unlike earlier translators, who often imposed their own cultural interpretations, George approached the text with strict philological discipline, allowing the ancient Mesopotamian voice to speak clearly across the millennia. His expertise in Akkadian linguistics enabled him to capture nuances lost in previous translations. The phrase "before I die, please listen" reflects George's passion for ensuring this ancient wisdom reaches modern ears in its most authentic form. Throughout his career, George has reminded audiences that the Epic of Gilgamesh isn't just an ancient tale. It's a mirror reflecting everything we still wrestle with today: mortality, friendship, and the longing for meaning. But what makes its structure so timeless? Stay with me till the very end, because this part reveals why. The structure and evolution of the epic. The Epic of Gilgamesh emerged through multiple iterations across thousands of years, with each version adding layers to this extraordinary narrative. Understanding its evolution reveals how ancient civilizations preserved and transformed their cultural heritage. The literary journey of Gilgamesh began with 5 independent Sumerian poems about the legendary king of Uruk, dating back to the 3rd dynasty of Ur around 2100 BCE. These original tales weren't part of a cohesive epic cycle, but existed as separate oral narratives performed at royal courts. Under the patronage of King Shulgi, ruler of the Sumerian city of Ur, these stories experienced a revival as he established scholarly academies at Ur and Nippur, where the Sumerian tales were meticulously copied. As young scribes studied in old Babylonian schools, they transcribed various oral stories about Gilgamesh. Notably, one significant tale was sung in Akkadian rather than Sumerian, titled Surpassing All Other Kings. This marked the transition to the Old Babylonian version, compiled around 1800 BCE, representing the earliest surviving tablets of a single unified Gilgamesh narrative. By the late 2nd millennium BCE, political shifts reshaped the story further. Following the abandonment of southern Mesopotamian cities including Nippur around the end of the 18th century BCE, the scribal academies closed. After hundreds of years, literary works in Babylonian dominated scribal learning, and the Akkadian Gilgamesh story proliferated in different versions. The defining moment in the epic's development came between 1300 and 1000 BCE, when a Babylonian scholar named Sin-Liki-Unnini compiled what would become the classic version of the Gilgamesh tale. Rather than simply copying earlier texts, he assembled various versions from both oral and written sources, updating them to reflect the literary concerns of his era. This standard Babylonian version, bearing the incipit "He who saw the deep," Sha Nakba Imuru, differs significantly from the older version that began with "Surpassing All Other Kings." This new introduction references the deep mysteries Gilgamesh learned from his meeting with Utnapishtim. Approximately 2/3 of this longer 12-tablet version have been recovered. The most complete surviving iteration was discovered by Hormuzd Rassam in King Ashurbanipal's library in Nineveh in 1853, dating to the 7th century BCE. Importantly, this discovery provided the foundation for Andrew George's definitive modern translation, which meticulously reconstructs the standard Babylonian text. The standard Babylonian version consists of 12 tablets with a distinct narrative structure. The first 11 tablets form a coherent story following Gilgamesh's journey from arrogant ruler to wise king, who understands that achievements, not immortality, constitute one's enduring legacy. The 12th tablet stands apart as an appendix, containing a literal translation of the Sumerian story, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and the Netherworld. This edition creates inconsistencies, as Enkidu appears alive despite having died in Tablet the 7th, and Gilgamesh shows kindness to Ishtar despite their rivalry in Tablet the 6th. Scholars generally consider it a later edition that disrupts the carefully crafted 11-tablet narrative. Through each tablet, the epic traces Gilgamesh's transformation from his initial meeting with Enkidu through their adventures against Humbaba in the Cedar Forest, culminating in Gilgamesh's quest for immortality after Enkidu's death. Recently discovered tablets have added new details, including 20 additional lines describing the Cedar Forest as a noisy jungle inhabited by exotic fauna that entertained Humbaba. Before we dive into the story of Gilgamesh, let's pause for a moment and trace how the epic itself evolved, because it's more than just an ancient poem carved on clay tablets. It's a mirror of humanity's growth, stretching from humble tribal beginnings to mighty empires that rose and fell, yet never lost their hunger to understand life, death, and everything in between. The Epic of Gilgamesh carries echoes of every era it's passed through, and what it reveals about friendship, loss, and immortality will leave you thinking long after the story ends. So stay with me till the very end. The story of Gilgamesh. At its heart, the Epic of Gilgamesh narrates a profound emotional journey, one man's transformation through friendship, loss, and the ultimate confrontation with mortality. Initially, Gilgamesh ruled Uruk as a cruel despot who takes them all, even the children, and whose lust leaves no virgin to her lover, neither the warrior's daughter nor the wife of the noble. The gods created Enkidu specifically to challenge and balance Gilgamesh, a wild man described as Gilgamesh's second self, stormy heart for stormy heart. Their relationship begins with confrontation. When they first meet, the two wrestle fiercely for a long time before becoming inseparable companions. This transformative friendship proves mutually beneficial. Enkidu gains wisdom about the finer things in life, whereas Gilgamesh develops empathy and emotional depth. Together, they complement each other perfectly. When Gilgamesh fears confronting Humbaba, Enkidu encourages him, "Why, dear friend, do you speak like a coward? What you just said is unworthy of you." Conversely, when Enkidu hesitates, Gilgamesh bolsters his courage. Their bond exemplifies what ancient Mesopotamians considered the ideal friendship, one where each partner becomes stronger through mutual support. Consequently, when Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh experiences devastating grief. "How can I rest? How can I be at peace?" he laments. "Despair is in my heart. What my brother is now, that shall I be when I am dead." This pivotal moment transforms Gilgamesh's priorities completely. Exchanging royal garments for animal skins, he embarks on a desperate journey to find Utnapishtim, the sole human granted immortality after surviving the Great Flood. This quest represents Gilgamesh's refusal to accept the human condition, his determination to escape the fate that claimed his friend. Throughout his journey, Gilgamesh faces challenges that force his emotional growth. The confrontation with Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest, initially showcases his heroic prowess, yet also reveals his hubris. After defeating Humbaba, who pleads, "Let me go free," Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill him anyway, an act that angers the god Enlil and foreshadows Enkidu's death. The encounter with Utnapishtim proves even more transformative. The flood survivor tells Gilgamesh, "When the gods created man, they allotted him death, but life they retained in their own keeping." He challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, a test Gilgamesh immediately fails, demonstrating that he cannot overcome even sleep, let alone death. He may have come back to Uruk with nothing in his hands, but everything inside him had changed. The man who once chased eternal life now understood that the only thing that truly lasts is what we leave behind. Our story, our impact, our legacy. It's a realization that turns Gilgamesh from a desperate seeker into a timeless symbol of what it means to be human. And if you think his journey ends there, think again, because the real magic of his story lies in the lessons that still whisper through the ages. Stay with me till the very end. Themes that echo through time. 4,000 years after its creation, the themes of Gilgamesh continue to resonate with modern readers, speaking to fundamental aspects of human existence that transcends time and culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh confronts mortality as its most prominent theme. Until Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh lives in denial of his finite nature, believing his legendary feats will grant him lasting fame. However, witnessing his friend's demise forces him to face his own mortality. "How can I rest? How can I be at peace?" he laments. "Despair is in my heart. What my brother is now, that shall I be when I am dead." After his failed quest for immortality, Gilgamesh discovers what Utnapishtim already knows. When the gods created man, they let death be his share, and life withheld in their own hands. This revelation transforms his perspective. He must accept the universal human condition rather than escape it. Throughout the epic, Gilgamesh's understanding of kingship evolves dramatically. Initially described as 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, he begins as an oppressive ruler who takes them all, even the children. His journey teaches him that true leadership transcends physical dominance. Indeed, only after his frustrating and vain attempt to find eternal life does he emerge from immaturity to realize that one's achievements, rather than immortality, serve as an enduring legacy. His recognition that the walls of Uruk constitute his true immortality reflects this transformed understanding of power, leadership through service rather than domination. Perhaps most poignantly, the epic explores how relationships shape human identity. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu proves mutually transformative. Enkidu pulls Gilgamesh out of egocentricity, whereas Gilgamesh helps civilize Enkidu. Moreover, their friendship provides essential balance. Because they are evenly matched, Enkidu puts a check on Gilgamesh's restless, powerful energies. After Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh's profound grief illustrates how love connects us to life's meaning despite its inherent fragility. Long before the noise of our digital age, an ancient voice tried to remind humanity of something timeless, that our stories, our memories, and the love we leave behind are the only things that outlive us. Andrew George didn't just study those old words, he felt them echo through centuries, almost as if they were whispering directly to us. And now, he's passing that same message on, urging us to pause, reflect, and listen while we still can. Because what he's about to reveal might just change how you see life, death, and everything in between. Why Andrew George says, "Before I die, please listen." Andrew George's life's work had become more than a career to him. It was a calling that came from somewhere deep within. When he spoke about his lifelong connection to the Epic of Gilgamesh, he often said, "Before I die, please listen," as if every word he had ever translated carried a heartbeat of its own. Those who knew him could sense that this wasn't just about dusty tablets or ancient languages. It was about something far more personal. For decades, George had poured his life into deciphering and understanding Gilgamesh, and through that work, he had found a voice that spoke not only to the past, but to the heart of what it means to be human. He didn't look at the text as a neatly finished story, but as something alive, raw, and deeply human. He once said the epic was something more like life, untidy, ambiguous. And really, wasn't that what life always was? Messy, unclear, and yet endlessly fascinating. He believed that only when people read it that way could they come close to what he called its hard, nubbly heart. Those who listened to him could see his eyes light up when he spoke about his favorite parts of the story. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu journeyed to the cedar forest, his voice would rise with excitement as though he were right there among them, smelling the trees and hearing the echoes of their footsteps. He confessed that he felt ravished by the descriptions of its beauty, and one could almost picture him lost in the wonder of those ancient lines. There was something almost contagious about his enthusiasm. It reminded people of those early scholars who had once spent years in the British Museum, bent over broken tablets, straining to read faint marks on clay, sometimes working by candlelight on foggy London days. Imagine that, men and women dedicating their lives to fragments of history, trying to piece together the wisdom of a civilization long gone. George admired them deeply and saw himself as continuing that same patient, devoted work, a small part of a much larger human story. When he talked about what Gilgamesh meant, his words always carried a kind of quiet conviction. He said the epic wasn't just about kings and gods. It was about the human condition itself. It was about mortality, that heavy truth that everyone must face one day, no matter how powerful or wise. The story, he believed, forced people to look directly at the inevitability of death and still find meaning in life's fleeting moments. According to him, Gilgamesh reminded readers to hold on to what truly matters, to friendship, to love, to laughter, and to the brief joy of being alive. The tavern keeper's advice to Gilgamesh, to eat, drink, and cherish life instead of chasing immortality, was, in George's view, a form of ancient mindfulness. Isn't that what so many people today are still trying to learn? To stop running and start living? He often said that the epic carried a quiet wisdom that many modern readers overlook. It taught that maturity doesn't come from success alone, but also from failure, pain, and loss. How often do people try to avoid those parts of life, only to realize that they are the very things that make them grow. George believed the story showed that life's hardships, while cruel, are also the teachers that guide us toward understanding. The idea that a poem written over 4,000 years ago could speak about such things amazed him. How could words carved into clay so long ago still echo in people's hearts today? He found that question beautiful rather than strange. For many readers, George said, the poem became a kind of mirror, reflecting whatever they needed to see in themselves. One person once described it to him as a punching bag, something to wrestle with, to fight against, and to grow stronger from. He loved that description. Wasn't that what great art always did? It challenged, it provoked, and it pushed people to think and feel more deeply. To George, the epic was not a relic of the past, but a living conversation across time. Every reader who opened it was stepping into that dialogue, bringing their own fears, hopes, and questions. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.